I am located in the Pacific West in the US. So for me, it's afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. And good evening or good morning, depending on where you are in this session. I want to indicate that I will be presenting some practical examples of alternative assessments. My name is Nadia Jaramillo, and I work at Oregon State University. My role in the work that I will be presenting is of an instructional designer. That means that I work with faculty one-on-one, consulting with them on pedagogical practices and technological resources that they can use for teaching their online courses. The courses that they design and that I help with all these aspects are mostly asynchronous courses, with some of them being offered in a blended format. So what I will share with you today is, first of all, why as an instructional designer, I care about assessment. I was an instructor before moving into this role, so I have the teaching experience and also some realizations about what ways of assessments have been very traditional in higher education, and how some of those assessments may not necessarily respond to the students' needs and interests. I will provide a definition because this is how I went into the rabbit hole of alternative assessments. Some of the examples that some of the faculty that I work with have been able to implement, variations, adaptations that can help with ideas on how to move forward with implementing some changes in the types of assessments. And finally, some assessment considerations that help faculty think more deeply into the ways that they want to design the evidences for their students to show how they are learning and what they are learning. Why I care about alternative assessments? The way that I came into alternative assessment is a journey of reflection on my own practice as an instructor, as a learner, and now as a designer. When I was learning English as a second language in my country, I had multiple choice questions, mostly as the assessments to indicate whether I was able to identify grammar aspects of the language, a vocabulary, if I was able to conjugate the verbs. Even for writing, sometimes I had multiple choice exams for listening comprehension, what I understand and whether I got the right answers or not. And I have been reflecting on the fact that when I communicate with other speakers of English, I don't really have a choice and say, well, I need to select A as my answer or B as my answer. I needed to really jump in and talk with them and make use of the language. So to me, it was really frustrating that the kinds of assessments that I had as a student did not really reflect the kind of encounters and communication activities that I will have with other people. So there was this really dissonance in the sense of what I was being prepared was not really preparing me for engaging in communication in the real world. And as I was teaching English as a second language and as a foreign language, and then when I became a teacher educator, I tried to change those assessments in ways that reflected what students will actually be doing. And now that I'm an instructional designer, I try to help faculty think beyond those traditional assessments to really help students develop their skills, their competencies that they will need actually to use. What are the takeaways that they can take from the classes they are taking, and how instructors can improve those assignments. So that is the story behind my interest in these different types of assessments. When I talk with faculty about the possibility of exploring alternative assessments, I also get a question about, like, what do you mean by that? And my class is in the STEM field, so there's no room for alternative. So I had to go and actually check what it really means so I can make my case and help faculty envision a different way of providing the students with activities where they can demonstrate how they are learning and the different activities that the faculty are asking the students to complete. So one of the definitions is offering or expressing a choice. And throughout the sessions today, we have heard a lot about a student choice, where students are able to select the ways, the tools, the means in which they can demonstrate how they are learning and what they are learning. And the second point of the definition is that it is different from what is usual. So to me, that sounds like an adaptation of the norm that we normally have in the types of assessments. So so I'm deriving from these two big ideas to present the examples in the way that I have helped faculty create their somehow alternative assessments. We know through the literature, and we had in these in today's sessions, a lot of presenters providing evidence that creating alternative assessments for students provide students with that agency, with the autonomy to use their own means to demonstrate their learning journey, the learning gains, that students may also express a level of satisfaction with the ways that they are learning and how they feel that what they are doing in the class really matters, not only for the progression in the class, but also in the real life. Students can feel more engaged, they can increase the learning. There is also the idea that we have equality of learning opportunity, as we had in our keynote this morning, of the first keynote that we had about providing different alternatives so students feel included when they are completing the different activities in the class. We also look at alternative assessments as ways to reduce student anxiety, and we know that tests, for example, cause a lot of anxiety to students, so we give a student some choice, some alternatives that might help reduce that anxiety. It can also help students make differentiation in terms of providing students with different ways in which they can express their knowledge. And we had in one of the sessions when we had the student presenting about how alternative means of assessment help this student with visual impairment to complete the assignments in a more satisfactory way. So we have that background from the research. And the first example that I want to share with you is one that offers a choice. Choice was built into that assignment precisely because the instructor came with the idea that one size fits all project would not serve the needs of the variety of the students that he had in the class. So this class was program evaluation in higher education. And as you see on the screen, what the class involved was the evaluation practice and addressing appropriate evaluation methods. So we cannot really apply one set of evaluation practices to the different settings, contexts, students, and programs that the students in this particular class were going to work in. So the way that we built choice in this assignment was that the instructor created a proposal project where students will create a proposal for an evaluation project. But it was not provided by the instructor in terms of this is what you will be evaluating in this particular program. Instead, the instructor built that choice through the choose your own adventure style, where the instructor provided different options that students can choose from based on the students' context in which they studied or they worked. And if you look at the screen, the last option that was provided was propose another idea. So if these ideas that are given to you do not fit your context or your needs or your interest, let me know what else you would like to work on. And then the instructor will work with the student on a one-on-one consultation to help the student narrow that idea for the project. So this is one way that we build that opportunity for students to select how they would like to demonstrate that they were learning about the components of a proposal for project evaluation. The project was submitted in the first 5 weeks of the term. So we have 10-week terms at a university, and the students also work in groups to provide informal feedback in the way that it was not graded. It was more about having a buddy with you, sharing ideas, and going back and forth about how they felt about the content of those projects. The second example that I provide to you is a course, Spanish in the United States. And this was a course for students that would eventually become teachers of Spanish in the US. And as you see in the description of the course, the focus was to study and look at the diverse identities of Latino, Latina, Latinx, and Spanish speakers, Spanish and English bilingualism, looking at critical sociolinguistic, historical, and political perspectives. There's a lot of heavy content in this course. And what the instructor decided to do was to create an autoethnography. So also bringing the students' background, the students' experience into this assignment that was scaffolded through different drafts. And it was not a draft that I submit and is revised, and then I submit a second draft and I revise, separated drafts. That was not this assignment. This assignment was built in every draft. So for the first draft, students will answer several guiding questions that the instructor provided in terms of how to elicit that ethnographic sense in the assignment. Students will engage in a little workshop where they will provide feedback to each other, again, provided with guiding questions, now with a rubric. Students will revise and resubmit that for the instructor to provide feedback. After they go through more content in the course, they will add more content to that initial autoethnography assignment so they can build that first draft, and they will have the same process for the second draft. At the end, they will submit the third draft that everything has built upon the first one, and of course with the content and the activities that were provided in the course. In the last draft, the students will present their autoethnography, the key points, what they were able to reflect in that assignment, but we also built a choice there. And the choice was to choose how the students would like to present that, either through a video presentation, either a narrated PowerPoint or a presentation with the slides, where they will show themselves on the screen, or they could submit the text, the final draft that they can share with the class, with the entire class, so they can also provide some comments, not necessarily feedback, but some final thoughts, because that was provided in the final class of the term. Then for the second point, where I went down the rabbit hole and tried to understand what it means to provide an alternative assessment to the students, it was different than usual. So we have something like a term paper, like a multiple choice. That is the common, that's the traditional. How can we make that different? How can we change or adapt that in a way that gives the students this different learning opportunity? And for this, the instructor and I work in the psychology of race and racism class. So this class has concepts that are very heavy in terms of the emotional response that could bring to students. The course looks at the history of racism in the US, the psychological effects, its racial identity, the different intersectional identities of a person, and how to live and work with individuals from diverse sociocultural backgrounds. So as you can see here, we needed to structure an assignment that would help students process this content in ways that reflect more personal to them rather than just one type of assessment for all the students. So what we did for this assignment, well, one of the assignments in this class was the typical interview assignment that some disciplines might use, where students create an interview overview, submit draft questions for feedback from the instructor, from their peers, to see what the questions are, will be deep enough, whether the questions are clear in what they're asking, and then the students conduct the review, the interview, and then they provide a report. What we did was to adjust, to change a little bit the way that the interview report will be conducted. And because of the content of the class, where students analyze different theories of identity development, what the instructor did was to apply the data. That means situate the data that they got from that the students got from the interviews within one of the theoretical frameworks and identity development models that were studied in the class. So in that way, students were able to make connections between what they got from the interviewees and the content of these very emotional, sometimes topics that they discuss in the class. The last example that I will present is business Spanish. This class was an introduction to the Spanish business world, where students will learn both the language and business concepts. Students will end with a portfolio where they will write resumes, business letters, and reports. The idea is to prepare students to navigate a business world that is handled in Spanish or in Spanish-speaking countries. What we did for this course was to provide a different alternative of that portfolio and create an entrepreneurial module where students will assume the role of entrepreneurs that will present a project to a set of judges, and they will tell the students which project was the best. So this model was adapted from the Shark Tank model that, if you might have heard, the Shark Tank is a program, is a television program where entrepreneurial people present projects that need funding, and they present to potential investors, and the investors really ask difficult questions to those presenters in order to see whether investing in their projects is feasible and profitable for them. So adapting that idea, we created a Shark Tank for the class where students will work in groups. They will create their enterprise. They will create their company structure. They will create the market analysis. They will add the resume. They will add their own business profiles, and they will present that to the class. It was a safe environment where students were not graded on the voting of the project, but it was more sharing with each other how the projects came to be and what students were proposing and learning from one another in the Shark Tank. The students will provide feedback to each other and also vote. But as I said, the voting was not graded. It was more for students to enjoy sharing with each other. What I got from this particular project of the Shark Tank is on feedback. The other courses are being taught at this moment and I do not have yet the insights from the instructors or the students' evaluation. But from the Shark Tank, this course was offered last year. And what we got from the student feedback is that they enjoy that experience, and that even some students consider that they learned enough that they feel that they have the skills and the competencies to actually conduct themselves in a business Spanish work context. The instructor perceived as well that the course was positive, that it was an impactful experience for students. And of course, this is a course that will need to be adjusted as the instructor continues teaching it, because there are always things that we need to change. Now, what has all of these examples and my interest in alternative assessments mean in the context of my work, helping others to envision assessments as activities for learning, activities that are not punitive, activities that would help students through the learning process? That has been a point that has been made in several of the sessions today and the keynote sessions as well, that assessments are not the end of the learning, but we need to take assessments as those learning journeys where students go through, they reflect, they learn, they provide each other feedback, they engage in a reflection of what it means for them to take a class, to complete an assignment, what it means in the long term as well for the professional careers. So I have designed consideration questions that we could ask each other at different levels if we want to implement different assessment strategies. And this is a work in progress. This is not something that is fixed, that this is the end, but this comes from the research that has been done on alternative assessments, also the experience that I have had with instructors, talking with them and consulting with them. So one of the questions that I have is at the student level focus. That means if we really want to create student-centered environments in asynchronous classes, sometimes it is difficult to know who the students are, but we can use the experience of previous students to build profiles, to build personas, or to inform the design of the assessments. What are the students' needs? Who are your students in the online environments? Where do they come from? What is that they are interested in the class? And sometimes you can modify those assessments on the go. For example, asking students at the beginning of the term through an anonymous survey, if you want, what are their interests, and make some adjustments while you are teaching the class. So you're focusing on how the students' backgrounds, the skills can contribute to the class. You can also make students be part of that assessment design, and that has been also proposed in some other sessions. Consider the students as assets, what they bring into the class, and how you can build the assessments so you can connect the outcomes of the class with those students' traits, characteristics, capabilities, rather than here you come and I'm going to tell you how you are going to learn in this class, but building upon those students' characteristics. The second design consideration is that you could also focus at the course level. And that is also important because in some classes, there are outcomes that are mandated by external programs or by external entities, not necessarily the instructor is the one that is creating those outcomes. So some of the outcomes respond to external influences. So in those cases, what is the nature of the course? What is the course? What does the course mean for students? Will students be doing community service, project-based learning? Will there be labs? Will writing intensive courses? What is the nature of the course? And then how are the outcomes linked to this nature of the course? What outcomes, what is the level of the outcomes? For example, if we look at Bloom's taxonomy, are the outcomes targeting the lower levels or the higher levels? How can my assignments be aligned to those kind of outcomes? For example, if we want students to have an application or students to do some kind of evaluation or exploration, probably aligning to a multiple choice questions may not necessarily be the case. I think that the previous session was very clear on that. And I think that it gives us a lot of room to think about how we can work on that connection of the types of assignments and the types of outcomes that we want. Also, we can also think, we can also think about how our assignments are or assessments are transparent. What do students need to know? What do students need to bring into that assignment to be able to complete that? So we want students to really struggle with the content, not with the instructions, not with the technology, not with the navigation of that assignment, but we want students to really engage with the content. So how is it possible that our assessments reflect that instead of the students having to piece together the different parts of the assessment to make sense of that first, and then they will have to complete that assessment. At the discipline level, that's another important consideration in design of the assessments. So we can reflect on the authenticity of some of the assessments. For example, what do people in the discipline do in a regular basis? For example, at the moment, I'm working with an instructor in food writing. What do people that do food writing write about? Or what are those types of activities that can be taken from the real world and adapted to the class? So we are looking at our blogs, our food critiques. So bringing those ideas from the discipline can also help to envision assessments in different ways. And also the format. Why do students have to complete a final paper? All of them. Can we provide students with an alternative? Now, we have seen from one of the sessions in this event that a student with visual impairment found that infographics, for example, was not an appropriate assessment for that student. But it helped when you work together with other students.
I'm sorry.
I think that I'm running out of time.
Yes, I'm sorry.
So I will share my email in case someone would like to connect with me, and I will be happy to answer questions via email.
Pedagogy and care. Oh, you said hi, Elena. Sorry, Kelly and I have just kept chatting.
Hi, sorry, I was in a breakout room recording it.
I think have we finished the recording now or not? Are we still recording?
No.